Hello, I'm Pragya Agarwal. I'm author of this book called Sway, Unraveling Unconscious Bias. Unconscious bias has suddenly become a very popular word. We're all talking about it. We're all talking about the implicit hidden biases that affect our actions, decisions, and interactions. In this book, what I'm trying to do is to look at the scientific basis and theories of bias, how it's formed, and what effect does it have. Often we like to think that unconscious bias is only associated with racism or sexism, but it's much deeper and broader than that. So in this book, I look at a broad range of cognitive biases, such as our hindsight biases, our conformity bias. We like to all be with people who think like us, who look like us, act like us, speak like us, and things like status bias and negativity bias. And currently, as we are going through a global crisis, there's so much information around us. There's also a lot of misinformation around us. And I look at biases that affect how we interpret information. We believe some information to be true and others not. And there is a bias to show that we always try and like to believe things that are of benefit to us or are positive rather than negative news as well. So I look at a broad range of cognitive biases. What is the cognitive basis of the bias? What's happening in our brain when biases are formed? And I look at the evolutionary basis of our bias as well. So do the roots of our bias lie in our evolutionary past? So in the past, in the distant past, we were all trying to survive. And so we had these instincts to categorize people according to in-group and out-group membership and label them. So we had to make these really instinctive, very quick decisions about whether somebody belonged to a tribe or community or not. And that's kind of the root of how we decide whether somebody is part of our tribe or not. And even though our society has changed, often a lot of our biases are rooted in this notion of fear or threat of somebody who's an outsider, who's different to us, and how they might change our status quo as well. So I look at the notion of evolutionary bias and how that might have affected our biases today. But what do we have to do to move away from it? How do we de-bias it? There's a really great interest at the moment to uncover the neural basis of our racial biases as well. I look at accents, how we're all biased and stereotype against certain accents. So I talk about my own personal experience that when my 3-year-old started speaking in a Liverpudlian Scouse accent, suddenly I found myself being a little bit uncomfortable with it, and then having to reflect on it about why I had this stereotype of what Scouse accent or a Scouser was supposed to be. And I realized that these were all shaped by my own experiences or what I'd read in media as well. And we so often see news articles which say this is the sexiest accent or this is the most poshest accent. And so our biases are shaped by these news items that we read in the media as well. I look at ageism and age discrimination, and I look at looks and height and colourism, which is still very prominent in South Asian communities, within communities of colour, where they fall back on our ingrained historic racialization and believe that lighter skin colour is of higher status. Obviously, I look at gender bias and how that affects how women in public domain or in prominent roles are treated, how women face a double bias where they might not be considered as suitable as leaders. And I look at AI and technology and machine learning, because that is really important about when people say we are not biased, there's no biases in the society, about how it actually affects the design of system and tool around us as well. And so it is by looking at the scientific basis and theories of a bias, looking at a broad range of bias, we can all start and reflect on our own notions of biases as well, and realize that it's actually, we are all biased. I am biased and so are you. But what can we do about it? And so hope you enjoy the book. Thank you.